Commodore Matt Buckley, CSC, RAN, Director General Navy People. Commodore Buckley joined the Royal Australian Navy and graduated from the Australian Defence Force Academy in 1992. He initially served in surface ships before specialising as a submariner, where he served in Oberon-class submarines, on exchange with the Royal Canadian Navy as Commissioning Operations Officer and Executive Officer of HMAS Rankin. He commanded HMAS Collins before serving as Commander Sea Training Submarines and then Executive Officer of the Navy's Warfare Training Establishment. Commodore Buckley has also served as the Director Submarine Capability, Commander of the Australian Submarine Force and the Director General Maritime Operations. He holds a Bachelor of Arts, a Masters of Strategy and Policy and a Master of International Relations. Would you please welcome Commodore Buckley?
Thank you very much. Yes, well, good afternoon. It's a privilege to talk to this august group this afternoon, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how Navy seeks to move forward with our part-time workforce in a more integrated fashion. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to essentially be talking to you about today is how we posture Navy's total workforce to shape, deter and respond in the maritime domain. And the reason for this discussion is to really articulate that everything we're going to be doing with our part-time workforce, for those members who sort of had more previously been known as a separate RA&R, is linked to the Defence Strategic Update and indeed what we're seeing in the region in terms of our strategic circumstances. It should be lost on none of you that the nature of the Indo-Pacific is essentially a maritime theatre, contiguous theatre, and what we will need to do is to make sure that we bring to bear all of our human resources, including our part-time workforce, to be able to do what CN's outlined in our maritime domain strategy, and that's to prepare naval power so that we can provide a credible and sustainable permanent maritime presence, both as part of the joint force, but also with our partner nations in the near region by 2030, but through and beyond that time. I think I would say that one of the most important things that Navy can bring to the shape and deter elements of the defence strategy is that potent and credible maritime presence. And to do that, you need more than ships, submarines, helicopter flights, and specialist teams. You actually need the people to sustainably get the most out of those platforms. And that's just not in terms of keeping them at sea and keeping them where they need to be forward. It's also about sustaining them from forward operating bases, from home ports, integration, flyaway teams, etc., with things like logistics and repair. And we need to be able to do that in conjunction with our industry partners. So we'll unpick that a little bit as we walk through. Next slide, please. So this is the Navy Workforce Plan 2021 to 24 is my colleague, Commodore Anthony Klemfers, who looks at how we set our workforce requirements into the future. And one of the core goals of that Navy Workforce Plan is actually to increase our service category 3 and 5 workforce utilisation in line with our allocated funding. And our aim in the longer run is actually to generate a peak strength of around 4,500 service category 3 and 5 members who are actively participating as a part of the naval force. You'll see in a minute when I get to a future slide that we've got at the moment about 3,800 service category 3 and 5 members in Navy, but not all of them are contributing each and every year. We've got about probably 10% of Navy's current sort of trained workforce, part-time workforce members. We actually want to increase that to around 20% over the next decade and beyond. And we're going to need to do that as Navy and the ADF grows, as our strategic circumstances become more challenging. And also we're going to need to do it to be able to walk forward with what's quite a challenging task nationally in terms of the national shipbuilding enterprise, but also things like sustaining quite advanced and significant platforms that we've got distributed not just in Australia, but in the near region. So utilising, bolstering that part-time workforce is a big part of that. Next slide, please. So this is the current distribution of Navy's part-time workforce. And you'll see we've also included there the mix between service category 3, 5 and service category 2 members. You'll note that there's a natural weighting to where Navy has some centres of gravity, particularly in New South Wales, in WA, and to an extent in Queensland. Although our presence in Queensland is probably more because of the number of Navy former full-time Navy people that actually move to Queensland once they leave full-time service. And that's quite fortunate for us because we've got quite an active reserve in southeast Queensland who ends up being one of our main contributors to deployable Joint Force headquarters in terms of our tactical staffs. And it presents us with a bit of a pointer, I think, in terms of the models of how we can generate some regional centres of gravity around that. One of the things that's become very evident to us over the last 2 years is as we've had to posture our part-time workforce to contribute with our partners in Army and Air Force in terms of Operation Bushfire Assist and Op COVID-19 Assist, is that many of those responses have needed to be generated regionally, and we've probably relearned how important it's been to plug in with those regional task forces that have sort of been based loosely around Army's reserve brigade elements that are in the state region. So I would say when this started, I was still DG Maritime Operations at the start of Op Bushfire Assist, and it was evident to me that our Navy part-time workforce had not for some time plugged in through those regional brigade headquarters. But what I've seen over the last 2 years is that that's become almost a seamless activity. So we've got a number of Navy part-time workforce that have been embedded in those joint task groups. I think it's a really good model, and it's actually reminded us in Navy how important it is to coalesce and use those local centres of gravity to build our part-time workforce. So it's something we're going to get after over the next couple of years. Next slide, please. So this slide here really just demonstrates that Navy's total workforce system is one of our main lines of effort within the current workforce plan. So this slide here really talks about the main initiatives that we're doing in Navy in terms of our workforce. I'll speak very briefly to those because they all do apply to the part-time workforce. The first one is our workforce generation system, and that is all about building a more resistible, more predictable and sustainable four-generation footprint for our workforce based out of our major fleet bases. The next one is our performance development system, and that's really developing our people's potential through a mastery framework, and that includes our part-time workforce. And it's about recognising the considerable skills that people gain outside of full-time service as well as in service, and being able to plug it into a framework of mastery. The next one's really our long-term cultural journey, Next Generation Navy. It's been going now for over a decade, and this is about delivering a robust culture where our people can prosper through high-functioning teams. It's well and truly embraced throughout the workforce and including with our part-time workforce. The next element is our Navy People Wellbeing Program. We kicked that off about a year ago, and that's about delivering a holistic wellbeing environment for our people while they're in service, in terms of keeping them fit and well, for those people who are recovering from injury and the like, to help them get back into a deployable state, and for those who are unable to, making sure we transition them with dignity and respect. And the last element really is this Navy total workforce system. It's how we make this a simple and seamless way for people to be able to render service predictably, and do so completely seamlessly with our full-time workforce as part of supporting those presence operations I talked about before. Next slide, please. This is the last slide I'll really talk to today, and it's really to get after the main areas that we're using to to sort of generate the effects I talked about earlier. So the first one is that it's important that we can increase that surge capacity. As we've seen during these domestic support operations, it's been a leader for us to understand that we may have to do that for other operations, including the full spectrum of operations. So we need to build resilience in terms of our exercise and operational support staffs, both at the operational and tactical levels. We need to be able to generate ready pools of operational reliefs for our force elements. We are planning on delivering more robust regional reserve hubs through our naval establishments, which will then plug into the fleet. And as HPC alluded to in her presentation, we're on the early stages of a program of training general mariners who are essentially will be part-time workforce throughout their career. We started with our Navy gap year personnel. So those Navy gap year personnel who don't choose to transfer into full-time service in a category or work group, we offer them a general mariner option. It's been quite popular, and we had around 30 of those folk over the high-risk weather season providing support through the task groups, and that's building now. And the other one is ops specialists, which are another opportunity to build people with operational and tactical staff skills. We're in the early stages of that, but again, once we set those regional reserve hubs up, we'll have a good framework to be able to employ those general mariners and ops specialists. The next part is really about improving our engagement. I've already talked about reinforcing our local commands. We've now got quarterly forums with our part-time workforce. The next one's coming up shortly. We did one a few months ago, and that's listening to them and giving them the opportunity to provide us with some feedback on how we can do better. It's maximising ForceNet, and we've had a very significant increase over the last 2 years, both in terms of our full-time and part-time workforce participation using that bearer. And the last one is to make sure that career management and performance development are applied to the full workforce, not just our permanent members, but also our part-time members. So we've got a bit of work to do there on making sure that we recognise the skills of those people and are able to advance them and develop them while they're rendering part-time service. In terms of the way that we've set up to now lead our reserves, we've transferred, right at the start of this year, we transferred responsibilities of what was the Navy Reserve from DG ANCR to myself, DG Navy People, recognising that our part-time workforce must be integrated with the rest of the Navy. We're aligning that policy now at all levels of our system. And the other one is to really drive the total workforce system into the mainstream. I think what we're seeking to do there is to really look at the main parts of the total workforce system that are working for us and for our members, and to double down on those. Certainly the service category 5 area is one Navy is not used as much as our service counterparts, and something that I think we can do more of, because it provides not only certainty for our part-time workforce, but also for employers. The last thing I just wanted to cover very briefly today was a nascent relationship, if you like, with entities such as the National Shipbuilding College and the broader entities that are going to be involved in the National Shipbuilding Enterprise, and indeed regional maintenance and support for the fleet going forward. If you think about it, most Navy people will have a full-time career of around a decade or so, some a little longer, but the large bulk will probably serve for 10 years or so in Navy. And then they will seek other opportunities. Our aim there is to not only have those folk participate in the part-time workforce, but where possible to actually help them build the skills, etc., necessary to have a seamless off-ramp into the industries that they would have already been involved in the first part of their career. So for me, it's somewhat of a win-win for us. We've had some really positive engagement there so far. And if you look at the significant task ahead of us, both in terms of generating a more sustainable and robust maritime force, but also a maritime support and shipbuilding industry, we're going to need to make best use of all of our people. And I think that the sort of arrangements that we can have where we keep people involved and engaged through regions, where we have them close relationships with our industry partners, and people are able to render service both sides for the full time of their career, is going to be a win for both of us. I'll leave it there, mindful that we've got a Q&A at the end. Thank you.